Thank you. Is out of the blue, David suddenly asked me to moderate this one. And when you're asked to participate in this forum, it's also out of the blue. So I'm not really prepared for this, but it's fine. I think it's an interesting forum, from very leftist to the rightist kind of discussions. But what I want to do in this presentation actually is just to draw your attentions to a much wider perspectives. Not just see Singapore as a tiny island, red dot dropping from the nose, whatever like the Indonesian president said. But rather I want to try to bring it into this context. Because Singapore has been always at the crossroad of everything. It's always in the situations of in between. Okay, but it's very important as a hub, like an internet hub, like a Google hub. So when Beng Huat said that the internet is banned in Singapore and for the civil servant, actually it's not true. Well, it's just to separate the workstations and your personal computer. And there is some, firewall things that's going on in between. But technically, Singapore has never been kind of shut down from this so-called the internet connections or global connections. So if we put into this context, the word Bumantara, for example, was coined by Sultan Tahrir Ali Shahbana, Indonesians, thinkers. It's long before the ASEAN was formed. And then we look a bit into the palimpsest of Singapore, and looking into names that is given to Singapore since 2,000 years ago. The name like Betuma, by the Arabs. And then before that, Tamara or Tamus is mentioned by Strabo, the Roman geographer, in 1st AD. 19 AD, sorry. Then you have the name like Pancur or Pansu. It's long time ago. And then these variations of different dialects and different spelling on the variations of Temasek. Then of course, another variation from Sanskrit. There's so many things. So this is a kind of a proof or evidence that Singapore is always become a crossing point of civilization, including, of course, another layers with the Shonanto. It's part of the Japanese plan to build the Greater Asia. And in the 15th century, you look into, this is a map of Zheng He voyage in the 15th century, Ming Dynasty admiral, and the maps that is derived from a Mao Kong map, showing the cities, the coastal cities around this so-called Mediterranean Sea of Asia. It's better maybe to use that word rather than South China Sea, so China will not grab that because it's called China Sea. But this Mediterranean is really become a fluid that connects different civilizations and crossbreed all this so-called culture. So we always rojak. Even the so-called the Chinese in Singapore are OCBC, orang Cina bukan Cina, Chinese but not Chinese. We are different kind of Putonghua Chinese. We are not Putonghua Chinese here. Even the Malay here are not really Malay. They are from Palembang, they are from Boyanese, they are Javanese. They just lump together into the so-called Malay. Right? If you go to the food court in Geylang Serai, there are two stalls of Malay food. One is called Indo-Malay, the other one is Malay. But Malay is more Indianized because they use turmeric, they use all these ingredients. Well, Indo-Malay, they sell ayam penyet. Flattened chicken from Batam that has become famous here in Singapore. And those things make us unique. This is from the Japanese map of 1899. Which shows the trading connections between Japan, Yokohama, Tokyo, to Suez Canal, to Europe. And of course, 1938 map shows Kallang Airport with a very special shape, circle. It's when the plane is landed like a corkscrew, not like straight lines. And to show that we always connected to the world. And the idea of so-called the Trans-Asian Railway Network several years ago, this is a map by UN to map all the possibilities to connect Singapore with the entire Asia up to Europe. Now it's beyond a kind of realizations when China, when Xi Jinping, and before Xi Jinping, Hu Jintao, said that we want to rebuild the Silk Road. And Xi Jinping is really implemented that using the so-called high-speed rails, using the financial instruments to support this, to kick out the Asian Development Bank, to kick out World Bank, and replace by another financial instrument to support all this investment. All the reclamation in Johor, how the Chinese capital flows into Southeast Asia. And this is all part of the recreations of the old Silk Road, Maritime Silk Road or the Land Silk Road. This is, I took this snapshot in front of Bank of China. So it's very clearly that the Bank of China is part of this, and the so-called Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank is part of that. So while some questions why the big box in Jurong East was located there in Jurong East, and very close to the railway station for the high-speed rail which connect Kuala Lumpur and Singapore. And why the Japanese was kicked out from Jakarta to Bandung. The contract is given to the Chinese to connect Jakarta and Bandung with high-speed rail. This is part of this plan, of these connections. And of course, if you look into the global transportation system, Singapore is always part of this story. So in the long term, whether it's PAP or non-PAP, long before PAP, Singapore has been there and always thriving. This is another maps of a global internet map, where Singapore also part of this with the highest bandwidth speed. And of course, it's a bit funny if the government say, okay, we are afraid of internet because now it's become like a tsunami. The cyber attack. So that's why it's disconnected from the main internet, but still every civil servant is able to use their own handphone or private laptop. And I think the government will give every civil servant new laptop. And that is nice to have this device. And Singapore is always part of this kind of alliance, economic, regional cooperations, integrations, and in fact is the one who pushed very hard towards the Asian integrations, to expand the so-called the hinterland and to become a capital of Asia, the capital of trade and nodes and everything. And of course, you know, the interesting things about the government policies of Singapore is by taking hostage of your kids, into smart Indonesian kids, smart Thai kids. They're given scholarships since secondary school up to the junior college, up to university. And if they're quite successful, then they will be offered PR-ships. And then after that, after 2 years, become citizenships. So how to top up this, you know, the genes of the smart people. And once your kid's studying in Singapore, the parents needs to have a condominiums. So the hostage of the, you know, the property and money. And then the health, doctor, okay? Because if you get sick, the best medical service is in Singapore. And if you want to have a cheaper one in Penang or Malacca, well, maybe you take another risk. But health, a playground, if you feel that you're very stuffy and cannot breathe in Surabaya because of the pollution of Jakarta, just come to Orchard Road and have a recreation here. Security, all things that has been mentioned in the previous panels. These are things that Singapore can offer, but at the same time also, Singapore makes everybody stakeholders. So even we are bullied by Malaysia, bullied by Indonesia, bullied by China, we just keep quiet and keep walking because everyone needs Singapore. I think that is the things that because of the positions, the locations, but also maybe also because of the policy. But whatever happened, this kind of culture, the food court culture, politically correct culture, hybrid food, will always be there. So therefore, my argument here is that I just quote from this Margaret Sullivan, who came to Singapore in 1993 to conduct a research on the cottage industry and high-rise Singapore. They said the fabric of a city is the daily lives of its people. They are its core, its texture, its vitality, uniqueness, its heritage. In much of the same way, the web of people lives in their work. It is their livelihood, thread of weaving together in the past, suggestion of the future, the dailiness of the present. And this is the DNA of survival of Singapore. Thank you.